So we're here at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I wonder, we're going to talk a lot about film, of course, and music and film, but I wanted to talk, I guess, at the beginning, a tiny bit about art. Is this the first time you've been here? I assume you've been here many times, right?
No, I've been quite a few times in New York, but first time I ever dared to step across the threshold into this museum. But it's not just this museum. I do have a difficulty to go into museums. My wife actually pushes me sometimes and takes me along, and it has always been rewarding. And en route here to the theater, I've seen extraordinary things, and I might eventually come without fears. I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit scared because I always have the impression that eternity, a quasi-eternity, is staring at you. So that's my problem to get into a museum, which is completely silly.
I mean, sometimes it basically is at the Met. You know, you have mummies looking at you from eons ago.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's phenomenal what's there, and I'm very privileged that I can be here and talk to you, and thanks everyone for the invitation.
The first clip that we wanted to play, and we'll be playing a lot of clips throughout the evening to, I guess, use that as a jumping off point to talk about things, is actually related to something that's going on at the Met at the moment.
Just upstairs I see a wonderful exhibition of Hercules Seeger's work. Most of the prints have been lost, or his art. There's something like 120 or so small prints, some of them not much larger than my palm. Wonderful, an incredible artist, early Rembrandt time, but so extraordinary that you immediately have the feeling this is the beginning of modernity. Some of these prints, if you put them into a 20th or 21st century exhibition of art, it wouldn't stick out. So he was one of those few ones who was 300-400 years ahead of his time. Rembrandt took him seriously, actually bought a painting, an oil canvas painting from him, which now is at the Uffizi in Florence, but it's also upstairs here. And it's, for me, a great, incredible discovery. He has become some sort of like a brother to me, because I had the feeling the kind of landscapes, most of it, almost all of it, he does are landscapes. And he was capable to see the inner soul of landscapes. And I had the feeling I had informed him somehow, although he's 400 years ahead of my time, and vice versa, he has informed me. So I owe him a lot. And then there was a strange moment. I was invited by the Whitney Museum to do an installation for their Biennale. And I immediately said, I do not feel very comfortable with contemporary art, in particular when you look at the art speak, and when you look at, for example, the garbage that is sometimes heaped into a corner and declared art. No, it's actually, it does happen, not that the entire scene of contemporary art is garbage, but I feel uncomfortable. It's too much cerebral, it's too much, in my opinion, conceptual, and I really do not feel very comfortable with it. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And they, on the phone, the curator said to me, but aren't you an artist yourself? And artists love to participate in the Biennale. And I said, no, I'm not an artist, I'm a soldier, and hung up. And my wife, Lena, who is here, she overheard it. And very often she is much more intelligent and prudent than I, she said, was this the Whitney? She overheard a little bit. And she persuaded me, do it. There's a lot of things between, let's say, films and between what I'm doing in writing. There's certain areas where I could express things that I cannot express neither in literature nor in movies. So I called back and I accepted, and I wanted to do something about Hercules Segers. Now, what was appalling to me, nobody at the Whitney had ever heard of Hercules Segers. And I had the feeling I must do something about it. And in a way, this installation had a lot of repercussions and echo. And in a way, I think I paved the way or created a climate that was very much in favor of accepting and embracing Hercules Segers. And I would like to show you the beginning of the installation. It's just it's not the installation itself, it's an architectural design, but I wanted to start it with music. Music actually recorded with Sardinian singers who have shepherds on the island of Sardinia in Italy. And they have this very strange, very ancient way of singing. And we'll come back to the Sardinians once or twice more this evening. And I wanted to create something strange and something almost a climate of expectation. And you see one or two sort of persons that would give the size of it. And then only after about a minute of darkness, light would slowly come on 5 screens and elements of Hercules Segers' prints would show up. Can we please show the first clip? So some of it will be bumpy. We somehow missed the beginning of the music and we faded it out. It's actually 17 minutes. But you saw a little bit on the 5 screens some of Hercules Segers' work, and this is 1620s, early Rembrandt time. That's the most astonishing about the whole thing.
How big was it? You said it was 5 screens. What are they? Was that life-size people up there?
Life-size people to give an impression. The problem of the installation was for security reasons, as it was dark, partially dark, they would allow only 19 or 20 people simultaneously into the show. But it was sold out all the time, and at the Getty, where it was shown subsequently, I think under the same restrictions, 300,000 people saw it. So it has been people lining up around the block.
You did this in 2012 for the biennial?
I think so, yeah. I don't remember exactly, but you're probably right.
Have you had more interest into doing these sorts of forays into the art world?
Yes, I should do it. I do have a couple of projects, but never had really the time to go into it because I have had a big output of films and have worked non-stop. So I'm trying to sit back and look out carefully what I'm gonna do next.
How did you choose the music for Hearsay of the Soul? Was it something that you already had on hand or that you commissioned for it?
No, it was already on hand, and I was during the recordings. It was recorded in Paris and was actually meant for 2 films. One was The Wild Blue Yonder, some sort of a science fiction film, and the other film was a documentary, The White Diamond, about flying between balloon and blimp, an airship in the jungle of Guyana, with a very deep tragedy as a background, and I wanted to have this gravitas in the voices, and the cello that you hear together with the Sardinians is Ernst Reijseger, with whom I have worked now on 5 or so films. A wonderful, great musician, and I do believe he's one of the finest composers that we have at the moment. And I owe him a lot, and we'll see him a little bit later, in person, in fact.
How did you first run into his music?
I was looking into music of Sardinian voices, and found a recording of Sardinians together with a cello player. And my wife Lena tried a long time to get hold of it, and finally when I heard it, I had the feeling this is a man with whom I have to work. And met him, and we did, and some of these recordings we did in Paris, that's interesting, were done before the films were made. The music was first, and the cinematographer in Guyana in the jungle asked me, how do we film this? How should the camera move? And I put some headphones on his earphones on him, and I said, this is how we are filming it. And he heard this kind of music, and I said to him, it has to float. And I did the same with the Sardinians. Actually, there was also a very fine singer, Mola Silla. He comes from the Senegal, and he was the one who would call out for the faithful from the mosque, and he had this incredible booming voice. And Mola would sit there, and he would have a microphone installed for him, and I said to him, well, we are going to record now, shall we do some rehearsing? You don't know the Sardinians yet, and you don't know the song. No, let's just record. And I said, yeah, but how about you? I will chime in, he would say. And he sat down in a chair and listened for music, then steps up to the microphone and sings along. And we never repeated it. Every single piece that you will hear with Sardinians is unrehearsed and never repeated. It's just unbelievable musicians. And I said to him, but Mola, I've changed the text. What the Sardinians are singing is about a lonesome island, but I'm changed the text into a text of a far out planet, and wanting to return to this far planet. And he said, no, you don't need to explain much to me, because I'm also a poet. And he would sing in Wolof. In Wolof, in his native tongue, he would sing along. And it was just wonderful, a wonderful experience.
Should we go to the next clip?
Yes. Let's see, what do we have? It's an interesting case, because I'm just talking about very recent work now, Into the Inferno, a film that was released by Netflix. And at the beginning of the film, you see an ascent of a camera, and from a certain point on, you look into a volcano, and we had this music. And since we had to acquire the rights from the monastery that's right under the patriarch, the Orthodox patriarch, like the Pope of the Patriarch Church, and we had to send this clip or these moments to the Archimandrit, the Archbishop, for final okay. They had actually sold this music to some other venues and films or whatever. And we immediately got, and it was all settled, and mixing was for 2 days away. And we got a categorical no, we cannot use this music because, and we tried to find out, in the Orthodox ritual and in these chants, the voices are voices of angels. And you cannot superimpose voices of angels over images of hell, of the Inferno. And for the Orthodox canon of faith, hell is a physical place on our planet. It's not an abstract sort of locale. It is physically here, And we were told, no, you cannot use this. And we tried to argue, and then it was clear, no, we cannot use it, so I had to replace it. Can we show how I actually wanted to show it? I have to stop it before you look into the fire. Can we play it? No, that's my promise to them. Can we show what's the film now? This has a very mysterious, very, very ethereal quality as what we saw. What we have now is a little bit more prosaic. It's also very beautiful, but it's slightly different. Can we play what we had to do?
Very interesting to me. Like, it may have been the sound mixing, it may have been your beautiful introduction, but I am undeniably want that first one. It's so much more powerful, and you can see.
Yes, and of course the kind of crescendo builds up until we see the fire. We do have a crescendo, and my main concern was how do I establish a certain sacrality, something cosmic almost, a religious deep sentiment. At the same time, there had to be with flying up, and you actually see the entire crew up on we were only 5 or 6. You see the entire crew. It was in the Pacific, Western Pacific, on the island of Vanuatu, or in the Vanuatu archipelago. And of course, how do I place the crescendo correctly? The image itself couldn't be changed anymore. We had to keep what we had.
How do you go about finding these things? Like in that case? In an instant, I knew this had to be Orthodox church choir. And I came across a church choir which I loved a lot, not knowing that I would run into trouble. And when it comes to somehow I could have somehow used it, and then they would have sued me, and for 5 years the film would have been played until I would have been stopped, and that's ridiculous. I do not function like that. So it was clear this has to be replaced. We have to accept the challenge. That's what we do. It seems like, at least in these first 2 clips, you love choirs. You love these sounds of masses of voices.
Sometimes yes, but we'll have examples where there's only one cello and doing very strange overtones. But the other part of this music, and also with the Sardinians, create space. And sometimes I would tell Ernst Reijseger, we are doing something now in the desert in Morocco, and it's space, it's solitude, and it's vastness, and it has no horizons. The music has to create space. And he understands, meanwhile, pretty much what I'm after. Much of what I do very, very fast. I know pretty well, and we have an example, a young Russian filmmaker who is here, Nastya Korkia. She has made a film for a workshop, which I did in Cuba only some 7-8 weeks ago. And background to this workshop was 55 filmmakers were selected from all over the world. I didn't do the selection. When they arrived, I gave them something they did not know, a basic setup. The basic setup was looking through a window. It could be either from inside out, and something attracts you that you see outside, or you look from the street or from wherever into a window and something attracts you there. The film shouldn't be longer than 5, maximum 10 minutes, and everybody there had to find a location, find a person or persons, actors, or for documentary participants. They had to concoct a story. They had to film it themselves. They had to edit on their laptops all in 9 days. At the latest, on the 10th day, they had to show the films. And many of them delivered their films after 6 days. Some of them made even 2 films. 2 of them made 3 films. And that was really a wonderful experience and very intense. I didn't teach anything, but I was available for everyone. And now for what is interesting, we'll see Forget Everything by Nastya Korkia, the film one of the films I really like a lot. And she, when she was pretty much done editing, she said to me, the husband of the leading lady who is in the film passed away, and the lady actually speaks about him. And Nastya knew he was Japanese and thought maybe there should be Japanese music. And I said, no, don't do that. Put in Schubert's Notturno. I just said it like that. And that's what she did now. And I will play to you some Japanese music without her film, and I warned her it was so deliberately chosen that it couldn't fit into any movie, probably. So please don't take it personal, and Nastya knows it, and she has accepted that we listen to some Japanese music, and you will see the contrast. Can we show Forget Everything? Congratulations to Nastya Korkia. This is a wonderful film, and if you understand, filming was done in 1 or 2 days, and it was delivered very quickly, and it's a great joy to have young filmmakers whom you can advise a little bit. So I like that fact. And in fact, I had some experience with Schubert's Notturno. It's the end of a film that I made in the Central African Republic, Echoes from a Somber Empire, about the dictator and emperor Jean-Pédel Bokassa, who crowned himself emperor. And it was a reign of terror. And when he was ousted and put to prison, all his palaces were crumbling away in the jungle, and he left a zoo where he sometimes would throw prisoners to the crocodiles and have them eaten by crocodiles. And there was a lion who was half dead because nobody would feed the lion anymore. There was a hyena which died only a day after, from emaciation, a day after I filmed the hyena in a cage. And there was a third animal, a chimp. And drunk soldiers, marauding soldiers, had smoked and had taught the chimp how to smoke. And the chimp inhales and smokes and looks with an utmost sadness out between the bars. And I said, Schubert Notturno, that's the kind of music for it. And I did that, and it's something where you wish you were never born. It's so heartbreaking. But I'm not going to show this. But let's play just a few seconds of Japanese music, just for the heck of it. And I said to Nastya Korkia, I protect you. You would never have taken this music, and sure, she would never have taken this. I play it to you anyway, because sometimes the choice of music is very too much cerebral and too much ideas behind it. In a few instances, it actually fits. And that is Lion King, Hans Zimmer doing with African music motifs. And it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal music, and it's Hollywood at its best, Lion King. And no,
I did not expect you to say that.
No, I really am capable to look at what's going on, and if there's something so big, anyone would see that. It doesn't need someone like me to recognize it. But can we please play a little bit of the Japanese music? Can we stop it there? Yes. So it's obvious for every one of you, if you had made this film that we just saw, you would not have used this music. And I tried to find something that was very Japanese, very screechy, very foreign to us, very unfilmic in movies. Normally you have to have a certain flow, like with Schubert's Notturno, but there are exceptions, and we'll have some of that in a moment later. Can we show, for example, in a moment, Little Dieter Needs to Fly? It's a film about the only American PAW who managed to escape from Laotians in North Vietnamese captivity during the Vietnam War. And
in this film, it seems like people were saying you need to have some sort of music that captures the island, or the country.
Yes, exactly. Who gets a feeling of Vietnam. And I said, no, Vietnam is so foreign to to my understanding of music. It doesn't have this flow, and it's too screechy and too dissonant. And I said, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm not playing any music of the region, Vietnamese Laotian music. What I'll do is I play music from Madagascar, the island of Madagascar, east of East Africa, and it is a shellac recording of 1931, which I found through Henry Kaiser, a musician, and he found these musics and had an edition about music of the world. And I was so impressed by this collection that I met Henry Kaiser and worked with him on music, and he got me ultimately into Antarctica, where I did a film, Encounters at the End of the World. But can we see the end of Little Dieter Needs to Fly? When he was found, he was almost dead. He was down to 85 pounds, almost had starved to death in the jungle where he had escaped. And he was only feeling safe in cockpits. Can we show the clip, please? Little Dieter Needs to Fly.
And finally,
Before we talk about the music there, I actually wanted to talk about the music of the man who was speaking, in a way. I feel like, you called him in a book the greatest rapper I ever met.
Yes, he had the incredible gift of speech. And he actually died from Lou Gehrig's disease, where one of the first things is that tongue movements are impeded, and he very quickly lost speech and was silent. He would even, without voice, he would tell you dirty jokes with gestures and roll on his carpet in laughter. And so, and I said to him, Dieter, this is such an injustice, because the two greatest rappers, the two greatest with a gift of gab, have fallen silent. It's Muhammad Ali and you. And Muhammad Ali, having become silent, has given me such a feeling of tragedy and compassion for the man. I always loved Ali, but I loved him dearly, and he's very, very dear and big in my heart, because he, the greatest of all rappers, could not speak anymore for decades.
You made a documentary in the 70s about auctioneers, and I also felt like that very much had this lyrical quality to it the entire time. Yeah.
This ultra-fast sing-song of voice, it's just amazing, and I always had the feeling, it's number one, it's like music. Number two, it is, in a way, the lyrics or the last poetry or the only poetry of capitalism. And I made I made a documentary which is called How Much Wood Would a Woodchuck Chuck? Because some of them train themselves in speaking it faster and faster and faster. And I found a very deep, beautiful, musical, extraterrestrial quality in this kind of language. And for a long time I had the feeling I'd like to stage Hamlet, but all of them should be former world champions of livestock auctioneers. And I would like to bring Hamlet down under 14 minutes and on a stage. So, but those are sometimes dreams, and you don't, I haven't done it yet.
There's still time. There's still time.
Yeah. But of course, Dieter Dengler, very close to my heart, and I loved him, and we grew up similarly in remote places. He in the Black Forest, I grew up in the mountains in Bavaria, and without the presence of a father, and in poverty and being hungry. So both of us immediately connected because we knew what it meant to be hungry as a child. So we had a very, very deep rapport.
I guess that kind of flows into the next clip you wanted to play, which is also about a young child and his relationship with his father.
Yeah. We are referring to Padre Padrone by the Taviani brothers, a film which won actually the Palme d'Or in Cannes at the time when it was released, and it's one of the films very deeply rooted in my soul, and it's mostly the character, the boy who grows up, in this case, overwhelming presence of a violent father, uneducated, illiterate people around, and he is forced out of school. When he's 7 or 8, his father takes him out, and he's forced to look after the sheep. And his father keeps beating him and violently, and it's a film about a kid that grows up in the mountains, has no clue what the world outside there is. And when he was grown up, he started to learn on his own. He even learned Latin, and he became a linguist. The real protagonist after whom this boy is fashioned. And this is the first time I got across Sardinian music. And what is so astonishing is, for me, it sounds like prehistoric. It sounds like Paleolithic voices. And let's play the clip.
Okay.
It's the boy has neglected some minor task, and his father is beating him for it, preceded by more beating, so we step in at the end of the beating. It is a heartbreakingly beautiful film, very, very deep. And what I find so astonishing with the Taviani brothers, they were capable to, through the music, to make something visible that wouldn't be visible, as if an entire landscape was also singing in this mourning song. Actually, the boy is only unconscious, he stays alive. And you see around these central characters other shepherds and their boys, and all of them violently beaten, and illiteracy and poverty, and all of a sudden it bursts out of their souls as if the entire world was mourning and lamenting with them. You do not see the other singers, but you see a landscape, and you would know if you extended it to the next valley and to the next mountains, all of them would sing.
This is one of the few clips that you picked that is from someone else this evening.
Yeah.
What other filmmakers have you known in the past that you've said they really do music in an amazing way?
Yes, the most amazing Bengali filmmaker Satyajit Ray. And there's one film really beautiful, it's called The Music Room. Yalzagar is the title of it, and it's a film about an aristocrat who lost all his money by giving concerts for free and inviting everyone, and he sits on the roof of his crumbling palace and looks into the sunset, and it's of phenomenal beauty, and Rai really knew how to use music and create a drama around music. Polanski sometimes has very, very good way to use music. Fred Astaire, of course, Fred Astaire dancing with his own shadow. The music isn't that great, and Fred Astaire he's not a great actor or anything. He's a wonderful dancer, and he dances with his own shadow, and all of a sudden the shadows do something else. There's all of a sudden, and it's a wonderful film, I think it's Broadway Melody of 1940, I believe, where he dances with his own shadow, and it's one of the greatest moments in cinema because it's so reduced. Movement, light, shadow, music, and there's nothing but that. And all of a sudden, to our surprise, cause and effect does not count anymore, because he crouches down and all of a sudden his shadow stands on, and he tries to catch up with them and chimes in with them. So it's just Fred Astaire is somebody who is an absolute must.
What's the next clip that you wanted to show us?
We have something. We should speak a little bit about my collaboration with Popol Vuh. Popol Vuh is named, this group, which actually was not a real group. It was one person, Florian Fricke, who would play most of the instruments in parallel tracks. Sometimes he would invite other musicians. And he appears in two of my films very briefly as a pianist. In my first long feature film, Signs of Life, a man who had an angelic sort of face, used to be a prodigy on the piano and had to quit this career because of inflamed ligaments, and he became a composer. And we started to work together on Aguirre, The Wrath of God, and we would show the opening of Aguirre, and it was a predecessor at that time of synthesizers. What he had was literally, you have to imagine a machine that runs parallel sound tapes. Each tape has a different pitch of tone, and you can access it and play it a choir organ. And he said, I would like to do something with a choir organ. And I said, yes, this will, I heard a little bit, create the space, create the mystery, create something we have never seen or heard. And it's a very opening shot of Aguirre, The Wrath of God. Can we play it?
Tell me a little bit about Florian as a person, because you worked with him on a number of films. It seems like he's, along with Ernst later on in your career, is one of the great creative partnerships.
Very important, because I made some 8 or 10 films with him. Later we somehow drifted apart. He was going more into some sort of a new age sort of direction, which I never liked. And there's this kind of pseudo-philosophical babble going around, and I don't like all that kind of stuff, and I told him. But of course it's his life, it's his...
How did he take that?
Oh, well, we would be very physical, for example, right after a thing like that. We would play soccer, put up 2 small goals, and man, would he foul me. I came back with a swollen knee after, when I said something like this. I knew my knee would be swollen like this, and I had some bruises and kept limping, but I kicked back sometimes hard. So, but I always liked his presence, and we had a wonderful relationship, and I truly miss him. By the way, pretty much every single composition and performance of Popol Vuh now is available in a box set of CDs. His son, Johannes Fricke, has collected and cleared all the rights and put a CD collection together. You can find it online easily if you're interested in Popol Vuh. And of course, sometimes he would do things where there was only literally almost like one single tone, one single note, and that would be all. And he understood it had to be completely minimalistic.
Tell me a little bit more about Florian as a person back before the New Age era, and when you were working very closely with him.
We would listen to music, and he taught me and showed me certain things, and he said to me, "I play Wagner for you." First time I really listened to Wagner, some let's say like the Prelude of Lohengrin, which I staged later on opera, and he pointed out how it was built up, how the very tender, almost inaudible violins are keeping on and unperturbed what is going on. They keep on playing, and then other voices come in, and it gets into a crescendo. So I learned some sort of inner structure of music, and he would play very dirty tricks on me sometimes. I remember, because I have no let's put it this way, I have a communication defect. I understand jokes, but I do not grasp irony, where everything is meant on a different level. And I won, for my first feature film, I won the National Film Award, which was also $300,000 in cash, which I had to invest to my next into my next film, and it was issued by the Ministry of Interior, because Germany doesn't have a cultural ministry because of the federal rules. And after I received this letter, 2 days later, I get a call at an odd hour, 9 in the evening, and a voice says, "I'm the assistant of the minister. The minister himself wants to speak to you." And then a few seconds later, he identifies the minister, says, "I'm the minister, and I call you as quickly as I could because I'm very sorry, we made a mistake. The letter that was sent out to you awards you this prize, but it's somebody else. We made a mistake." And I was completely calmed. I mean, it was shocking. And I was calm, and I said, "Sir, you are responsible for the security of our borders. In what kind of mess is your house?" And the minister started to laugh and chuckle and giggle, and all of a sudden I realized, "Florian, you pig, it's you." It was him. And he never changed his voice from his normal voice. I had heard it. Neither in our conversations, nor the assistant spoke in a different voice, nor the minister. So those were things we went through, and it is as it is. And when I discovered Gesualdo, Carlo Gesualdo, the Principe of Venosa, and I was totally out of my mind because I thought I had discovered a whole continent. Early 1600s madrigals, the 6th book of madrigals, similar like Hercules Seger's, 400 years ahead of his time. Only since Stravinsky we have heard similar sort of tones. And I woke Florian up in the middle of the night, and he laughs and he says, "Werner, everybody who is into music knows who Gesualdo is. It's not you who discovered him." And I said, yes, I understand, but I still, until the end of my days, I find it unacceptable that anyone else has discovered Gesualdo. So it was a little bit like this. But can we try to see the
clip,
Steiner
perhaps?
clip?
That was also Florian's soundtrack work.
Yes, and it's a minimalistic because although it has to do with ecstasies, and Steiner, the ski jumper, speaks about his ecstasies, and of course he's in mortal fear, and he's in terror of crashing to his death because he was so superior that he would outfly all the competitors and land almost in the flat. And that would mean jumping from Golden Gate Bridge or jumping from the Empire State Building onto the concrete floor. He would be dead on the spot. So it's about this ecstasies and fear and overcoming fear. And
being very pragmatic, the process, you filmed this and then you gave it to him and said,
yes, he saw very early, and we would sit over the material, and Florian, of course, knew it was an important film for me because as an adolescent, I wanted to become an athlete and be not a filmmaker, but my first great dream was to fly without, like a bird, or fly like in dreams, like Steiner. And my best friend at that time, during training, had a near-fatal crash. Actually, the young jumper who crashes survived it, and you survive it because when you land on the steep slope, all the kinetic energy of the impact is built down over time, so you can survive a crash on the steep slope. You do not survive when you fly too far. Now, what we would show in a moment, the end of the film. And important here is Florian again made music which has a crescendo, but it has its crescendo after the real moment is over. It's a crescendo of utter solitude. And also important, and here we have an example because there's a written caption in German, but it's in subtitle, about solitude, and how image, text, and music interplay. Very often it's a text that triggers a music, something that I wait until I hear something in a dialogue, and then I would set in with the music. So finding the right moment, finding the moment of the crescendo. Can we show the other Steiner clip?
It's interesting that you talk about that pause, or how the climax comes a little bit after than you might expect it.
And I let him go out of focus.
Yeah.
And I do not show the 50,000 spectators. That just a moment later you would see the first spectators. There were 50,000 live spectators there in Planica in Yugoslavia.
For me as a viewer, at least the first time I saw it without your explanation, I was almost thought of it as there's still something might happen to him. Still that there's this fear, even though he's landed. And as a viewer, you're pulled in and you're still expecting something. Is that something that you thought about or that you play with, that expectation?
Well, I didn't play with his expectations. The events actually brought these expectations because he had a crash. He outflew the existing world record by 10 meters, almost lands in the flat, crashes so hard that for an hour he loses his memory. And the Yugoslavian, at that time still Yugoslavian judges, force him, go back, everybody. There are millions on television. We have 50,000 spectators here. They want to see you fly a new world record. And he said they want to see me bleed and disintegrate. He said a very strange Swiss word, zerschellen, disintegrate, crash into smithereens. And every single jump he does, he is under jeopardy of losing his life. So the events itself triggered what the flow of narration does, and it triggers a kind of music that it somehow lifts you up. It's music, and I remember I said to Florian, it has to be something that makes you forget gravity. It has to be lifting you.
Around this time, Florian was among a group of musicians in Germany that's come to be known as Krautrock. There's Can, Neu, Kraftwerk, and obviously you also were a part of a group of film directors that came to be known as, a very special generation.
Yeah.
Were you paying attention to the rest of the musicians around Florian that were known for this stuff, or was that just a singular personal relationship that you had with him?
No, it was singular, and I, until today, I hardly know what Krautrock is. Who are the groups? I hardly ever heard them, but much somehow bypassed me in a strange way. Elvis, most notably. I grew up as a kid, as an adolescent, when there was Elvis, and I only got the message when the first Elvis movie came to Munich, and I was there at the opening night, and 20 minutes into the film, the young kids, mostly young men, stood up from their seats and quietly and methodically demolished the theater. And I thought, this is big. And I saw a similar thing, Rolling Stones for the first time in Pittsburgh, first time in America. And I was picked up by a wonderful family, and two twin daughters, 17 years old in this family. They said, you have to see the Rolling Stones. And there's this singer, Brian. There was Brian, whom they loved, but Brian, I think, died fairly soon in a swimming pool after an overdose. Yeah, Brian, you have to see Brian. So I went with him into the Civic Arena, 13,000 people packed. And after the concert, and they had this kind of plastic seats that they couldn't rip out. And when we walked out, I saw every third, fourth of these plastic seats was steaming from urine. The girls had peed themselves, and it was steaming. And I thought, this is going to be big.
I also recall a story of your reaction to music being a very similar thing. When you first heard Wagner at the festival in the city, you were sitting watching a rehearsal of one of the, I think it was maybe Siegfried or Parsifal, and there was this moment after
Parsifal, yes.
many minutes of quiet music, and then there was this loud bang.
No, not a loud bang. It's actually Parsifal, the second. What was it? Yes, Parsifal, the second act. And there's Kundry, and she's in this staging. She was hidden among rocks. She had a costume that made her gray like the rocks. And for 15 minutes, she's not moving, not stirring, and of course, not singing. And all of a sudden, she gets up with a scream. And I was sitting in this rehearsal, and there was hardly anyone, 5 or 10 people in there. And the seats in Bayreuth are quite narrow, plywood. And I sat with the knees against the chairs, and I was so shocked. I didn't expect this. I was so shocked that I jolted and I ripped the entire row of seats out of the anchoring, like during the Elvis film. And Wolfgang Wagner, the grandson of Richard Wagner, he said, and it was stopped immediately, and lights went on because there was this cracking of seats, and he said, who was that? Who was that? And I said, Herr Wagner, it was me. I didn't expect what I heard. And he shook my hand and he said, you are my right audience.
Should we go to the next clip?
Yes. Shall we? Yeah, to Ernst Reijseger. Well,
So this is
yeah.
one of your consistent collaborators.
Yes.
Maybe
And
we can just introduce who he is and what he does.
He is a cello player, avant-garde cello player, phenomenal with audiences, an incredible entertainer of children. He would walk with his cello among the rows and all of a sudden walk out a door and come back from behind the curtain, and just a quintessential musician and a very, very fine composer. So I recorded music in a church in Haarlem, near Amsterdam, Haarlem in the Netherlands. And I filmed it, and it's so amazing what a cello can do. Two things that come to mind. Number one, I always ask Ernst, take off your shoes, be barefoot. Then he's always better. I don't know why, but he is. And secondly, I knew he would play overtones, the highest pitch that you can imagine. And by the way, his cello has 5 strings. He has a very low pitched 5th string, and he had it built by a wonderful violin maker for himself. And the strange thing is I needed this kind of music which had to sound almost extraterrestrial, something that sounded like a fever dream, like something not belonging to our planet. And I used it in Cave of Forgotten Dreams. At the end there's a postscript which is detours completely from the paintings in the Paleolithic cave, because I had come across a biotope for tourists where they had hundreds of crocodiles at display, and this biotope was fueled with warm water from one of the largest nuclear plants in France. And under the pretext that I found radioactive mutant albino crocodiles, I filmed a postscript so wild that I was told various times, one day your career will end when they take you out in a straitjacket. Hasn't come yet, I still plow on, but let's have a look at it. It's
Nothing is real.
Yes, I'm going wild over it, and I enjoy it. And you see, at the end, National Geographic would never allow something like this. But I do it because I want to take the audience with me, my arm around their shoulders, and take them into pure fantasy, into pure poetry. And that's how they leave the film. That's how I like music, and that's how I like to do things like this.
For those who haven't seen that film, a lot of it's you're in a cave, and it's in a 3D film. I think it's the only time you've done.
The only one, yes.
You talk a lot about silence in the film and in other films that you've done, yeah. And I'm curious to hear a little bit about silence and its use and how you utilize it in your films.
Yes, very notable moments of silence in Cave of Forgotten Dreams. One of the scientists, and there are a couple of others, ask, can everybody be silent for a moment? Because when you really listen well, it is so silent. Since 28,000 years silence, you can hear your own heartbeat. And you actually can hear your heartbeat. Or in the film Aguirre, The Wrath of God, they are drifting, the Spanish conquistador is drifting down on rafts. And you hear these wild ambiences from the jungle. The birds are screeching and singing, and all of a sudden the jungle falls silent. And that's a moment where the native Indians shoot with little darts, poison darts, and kill off some of the Spaniards. So everybody's afraid of the silence. I kind of like this. Or for example, in Fitzcarraldo, the almost blind captain of the ship who tastes the water of the river, he knows we haven't reached the Rio Pachitea yet because the water doesn't taste like Pachitea. And again, everything's silent. And he says, there are silences and silences, but this is the one I don't like. So it has gotten into dialogues, into scenes, into all sorts of things, and I think much of what happens in music originates out of silence. And there's this incredible piece of composition by Beethoven, Fidelio, where one single, the female voice starts a cappella, and other voices out of nothing. All of a sudden, a quartet or a quintet starts to build up into something gigantic, cosmic in its beauty and its size. And it starts with silence, and it starts out of nothing. And Beethoven understood that. Maybe we should show 033, session number 2. What is interesting here is that we had a flute. The flute player and the flute player and Ernst had played very modern jazz, very free and not with any melody, and very strange and very screechy and I wanted to have a beginning like this, and I kept telling the flute player, you have to stop this and you have to find the melody, which was hard. And Ernst Reijseger with his cello forces him into a melody, and for sound reasons they placed the flute player far away on the balcony inside this Lutheran church. And there was no contact. I said, you have to have contact, be with them. And I said to Ernst, force him into the melody. Otherwise, we will not get out of this atonality. Can we play the clip, please? What my point here is that I physically interfere sometimes in recordings of music, and I place a flute player with the other musicians, and I ask him, chime in with a melody whenever you can manage, but chime in and become melodious, which he does.
And I guess this brings up kind of a tangential point, but I'm curious about sound design in the way that you work in your films. Oftentimes you've said in the past that sound can decide the outcome of a film.
Yeah.
Like, how do you deal with sound design, and have there been any examples in your films where you've done something specific?
Yes, of course. I started very early but it's very primitive sound design. Signs of Life. The central image is a long pan, an endless 180-degree pan over a vast field with 10,000 windmills. And there are literally 10,000 windmills on the island of Crete, all spinning around like a mad meadow of crazed flowers. And I put in, as not a realistic sound, I mean, the most primitive thing, I had applause of about 1,000 people after a concert. And I distorted it in a way that it almost sounds like clapping of wood. And then I superimposed, mixed in telephone wires that are singing. As children, we would put our ear on a telephone post and listen to the angels singing. You probably know this as children, you do that when the telephone wires are singing. So this was sound design. And but I have not been as deep into it as, for example, Hollywood action movies. They need a very specific type of sound design, and they mix out together 120 tracks or so. I try to keep it reduced.
What do we have next?
Yeah, I'd like to jump over a few things. We have too many. And let's speak a little bit about American folklore, American music. The end of the film Stroszek, we jump a few, or one or two, and it's number 054. Number 054, the very end, Dancing Chicken. I actually had the chicken in special training with this music in their winter quarter for about 3 months. Can we play 054, please?
I don't really know where to start with that one.
Well, I know where to start because you should know a little bit about the preceding. The protagonist in the film has tried his American dream, which ends in a disaster. His mobile home is repossessed by the bank, and together with an old half dim-wit old man, they both rob a bank, but the bank is closed. So for lunch. So they rob the barber next doors, and with the $34 of their loot, they go across the street and go to the supermarket, and he buys a frozen turkey. And the end of the film is he's crossing. It's like a road movie, driving across America with his shotgun and the frozen turkey, and he ends up in Cherokee, North Carolina, with his last dollar that he spends in a cafeteria, and it's his Cherokee Nation amusement park who have these boxes, cages with dancing chicken or the rabbit fire chief, and he manipulates. Normally you toss in a coin and then this kind of rattling music starts in the chicken dance, and in this case he manipulates it with a screwdriver and takes off in a lift and apparently shoots himself on the lift, and police is called and they ask for backup. They ask for an electrician because they cannot stop the dancing chicken. And that's the end of the film.
Okay, well, that's what happened.
But you should know to make the film as big as it is. Yeah.
Now,
I love the film. It's a wonderful one.
Now that we have the context, can we... Why? How? What?
It's... I knew before I was even shooting that I had seen Cherokee, North Carolina 10 years prior, briefly passing through there, and I knew this was a place I had to come back for filming. I didn't know for which film. 10 years later it materialized. I go back to Cherokee, and I knew it was going to be solitary, old, lost John. The chicken were trained with his music. They had to do the barn shuffle dance. And they get rewarded when they do it 3 or 4 seconds. A grain of corn pops out and they take it as a reward. But in our case, I wanted to have them dancing non-stop as long as we could get them dancing. And meaning, if you return to this place 4 weeks later, the electrician still hasn't stopped them and they're still dancing. That's how a real film end should be.
So, what do you have against chickens?
I have nothing against chicken. I like to eat them. But otherwise, they're scary because they are so phenomenally stupid. There's this, when you look from eye to eye, there's 2 millimeters of brain in between, and it's staggering. And what I have done in 2 films already, Hypnotizing Chicken, you can put their beak on the ground and draw a quick straight line with chalk, and they stay on the ground and they are hypnotized by that. So that's some sort of a relief for me. Otherwise, I like them roasted. And in a way, I did a similar thing, and I think we should show that. Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, has another type of creature, iguanas. They're phenomenally stupid. They're so, and I had a scene and with Nicolas Cage, and the significant thing about this scene is that he, in his haze of drugs, he's constantly under drugs, and he sees iguanas on his coffee table. But his colleagues, who are manning an observation outpost, checking, monitoring a drug house, they cannot see it. For them, there ain't no iguanas on the coffee table. And Nicolas Cage says, yes, there are. And what is also important in this moment is we as an audience see the iguanas as well, meaning the protagonist and we as an audience are bonding in a conspiracy. Only we see it, and the other stupid guys, the other detectives, do not see it. And there's a piece of music in it, which I do not know what it is. Maybe somebody in the audience will know. Let's play it. And I do not remember who sings the song.
It's Johnny Adams. He's a New Orleans singer.
Okay.
Obviously you don't remember.
Long live Johnny. No, I do not remember. But it's a wonderful piece of music. By the way, things like this I shoot myself. It was a tiny lens, as large as head of a match, and a fiber optic cable, and I tried to film the iguanas from only a few millimeters away and approaching their eyes so that they looked startled and stupid. And I had a light established for my camera which shines straight into the lens. So that had to be, it doesn't affect the light for the actors. But I wanted to have this crazy light and the crazy iguanas. By the way, it was only one iguana. The other one was a very vicious type of desert lizard which bit me very, very hard in my thumb, to the delight of everyone on the set. And they bite hard. I mean, it was like a steel vise. I couldn't shake it off.
We're going to open it up to questions in a minute, so if people want to line up. I do have a couple more questions about iguanas, though. I guess since you don't even know that it was Johnny Adams, you weren't looking to have local New Orleans music for this film. No, but I
heard this song and I immediately said that's the right one for the scene.
Why did that one hit immediately for you? It's just a feeling.
It does. No, it does. I'm very quick in these decisions. I knew it instantly. And people said to me, oh, try this or that. I said, no. We put this in, that's it.
With films in general, you don't use an enormous amount of music like that. Or am I mistaken? Because it seems like classical music, wordless music, choir music is something that you gravitate towards.
No, it really depends on what sort of film I'm doing, completely and utterly. That's the only criterion. The content enforces the shape. It enforces the style of camera. The style of camera with these iguanas is enforced by the craze of this situation and by creating a strange sort of conspiracy, as if we were a mouse sneaking in there and we see the iguanas. And every single film, it's a different and new challenge, but I like to go back to certain things. Of course, you cannot find completely new, different music for every single film.
Are there any questions
There are
from the
microphones
audience?
in the
There are
aisle,
microphones
but we would
to
need
the
some
left and the
lights.
right. We already have someone
okay,
coming up over there.
Thank you, Werner. It's always the greatest pleasure to listen to you speak. If Fitzcarraldo brought opera to the Amazon and the wilderness and the jungle, if your films or your spirit can carry us out into the cosmos, what music would you like to have?
Well, that's a deep question. I always had a longing to go out on one of these space shuttle missions, because I always send out
Well, you're
the
friends with
technicians.
Elon Musk now, aren't you?
Yes, but he will never manage to put a colony onto Mars. Number one, it's an ill-conceived idea. We should rather look after the better habitability of, you have to say it. I have a
Habitability.
habitability of our planet than looking to make Mars inhabitable. So it's ill-conceived, and to have, and he speaks about up to 1 million people. Getting 100 people there, you have to shoot rapid fire, machine gun fire of rockets to Mars, every 32nd one, with hundreds of robots, which will build, let's say, a cupola, and then hundreds of more of rockets, rapid fire, that bring up water, that bring up air for breathing. So it will be so phenomenally costly and so complex that it's not going to happen. We may land a single astronaut or two of them in a little toilet box, in a phone booth on there, and they will be miserable for 3 days and return. It's just not going to happen. It is 1,000 times easier to build a colony at the bottom of our oceans than building a colony up on Mars.
Echoes from
So
the deep.
we
Thank
don't
you.
belong there. We don't belong there. We belong here, and we better look after our planet. And I have been asked, because I saw the film that was made with Leonardo DiCaprio, which always focuses, or quite often focuses, what does politics do? Leonardo DiCaprio is at the climate conference in Paris. Then he delivers a keynote speech at the United Nations. He meets the Pope, and my heart is sinking, because I have the feeling we should not look into what can politics do for us. And under the administration that is governing here in the United States right now, ecological concerns are really a far back burner. Do not wait for that. But for example, in the film with Leonardo DiCaprio, you see a huge herd of cattle, hundreds of cattle. And of course, they 1 pound of cow meat costs, I don't know, 700 gallons of water, and methane gases are rising. But in countries like the United States, or in Europe, or in Japan, or in most countries, 45% of food is being thrown away. And this, number one, it's an outrage. It shouldn't happen like this. And you could reduce the amount of agriculture that you would need less, the amount of cattle that you will raise less and slaughter less would go down by 40% the moment you really eat one hamburger, and you better eat it full. You eat the whole thing, and you better look after your fridge and see what is withering away and eat that first. So it's so easy. We don't even have to change our lifestyle. It's just a little bit of attention, and you will have 40% less food consumption. So
Wow.
First of all, thank you so much. As a musician, I was curious, you've mentioned that you ask your cellist Ernst to take off his socks or shoes?
Shoes, yeah.
Shoes, okay.
And socks.
And socks. So I was curious if you have any other practical suggestions that you've given to your musicians to perform better.
No, it was only for Reijseger, and sometimes I always like to be with the musicians physically. I'm never in the recording behind the glass walls, and I'm always with the musicians and the microphones. And I remember music that was recorded for Grizzly Man, Richard Thompson, and Henry Kaiser, who got me into some very fine music. And he starts to play the opening music, and immediately after 20 seconds I stopped Richard and I said to him, Richard, this is the opening of the film, and you see a vast landscapes and bears and a young man who will be dead at the end of the film, and we know it from early on, and there's a phenomenal landscape, and I said to him, you are sneaking with your music into the film. It shouldn't be like this. Keep the tune, keep the melody, keep the rhythm, keep all, but stomp your foot down. This now is the lay of the land. And he said, I understood. And bang, does he step into it. And you see, sometimes it's good that a filmmaker is, who knows the other side of the collaboration, takes initiatives. But what it is in your case, I do not know. People who are drunk normally do not play music well, and people under drugs normally do not play music well. So stay away from it.
Thank you.
I'm curious if it's ever gone the other way, where you were making suggestions to the musician, whether someone like a musician has brought suggestions to you that you've taken.
All the time, of course. I'm complete. The suggestions normally come from them, let's face it. It's just the nature of the question that made me answer like this. They come all the time, and Ernst Reijseger would say, now sit down and listen to this. It would play something. Or Florian Fricke would put on his tape recorder and play me something where there were only two instruments playing, and he says, this is all very naked, very thin. Just imagine there will be a full orchestra, or let's say at least 7, 8, 10 more voices. Imagine it full blast. That's what I'd like to do.
Hey, pleasure. So I'm developing a short project about the discovery of Bigfoot, and a small doc about the son of Roger Patterson, the man who filmed the original Bigfoot footage. So I just wanted to ask what your suggestion would be in the documentary of that style, what sort of music you would use.
I have no clue, but of course it depends a little bit on what you are doing. Of course, the Bigfoot footage is fake. Yes. Every single piece of aliens being filmed, having been filmed, is fake. It's a figment of our fantasy. So bring me some film that entices you into wild fantasies.
It's more about his son being dragged into the woods by his father to find sort of a mythical beast that doesn't exist. So it's more about his son's journey.
Some music that carries some sort of mythical flair in it.
Folk, American folk.
You're asking me too much. If we sat for an hour together and I saw a little bit footage, I might have an answer, but unfortunately.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I wish you best of luck with the film.
Thanks, that means a lot.
Films about aliens are always fascinating, and 3 million Americans have had encounters with aliens. 300,000 among them were women who were not only abducted by aliens but also gang raped. And it's in my last film, feature film, Salt and Fire, and the leading character, Michael Shannon in this case, says, this brings me to two questions. Why are all the women who have been gang raped, abducted and gang raped, Why are they always weighing over 350 pounds? And second, why have we never heard of an alien encounter or abduction in Ethiopia? I think it's a very valid question you should ask yourself when it comes to Bigfoot.
I'll dwell on it overnight. Thank you very much.
Best
Marinate
of
on
luck.
that.
Up here.
Hello.
Hi, I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit on the Cuban piece that you showed. Why are you so adamant that like there shouldn't have been either Japanese music or other music that, I don't know, whether it was like Peruvian Japanese or not even like the piece that you picked? Like, why did you feel so strongly that you wanted to recommend that to the filmmaker?
Well, it was the proposal was should I possibly look for Japanese music, and I said no, that would be wrong. Put in Schubert's Notturno. It was in less than 10 seconds that I said that without thinking. And I had the feeling as I was not teaching anything, it was a workshop of 55 young filmmakers, very talented young men and young women, and Nastya Korkia is one of the finest talents I've seen in a long, long time. Where's Nastya? Can I see her? Where is she? Can she stand up here? That's her film. And my point was not against Japanese music. My point was we should not be docile and pedantic, and because the husband was Japanese, now we have to fill her emotions with Japanese music. Or in Little Dieter Needs to Fly, the pilot who was shot down over Laos and was in Viet Cong and Pathet Lao captivity. Why do I not introduce the flair of the region? Vietnamese music or Laotian music? No, because that would be too pedantic in my opinion. I wanted to have something completely uplifting, where you feel completely exhilarated, where you had a joy of, you join the joy of the leading character who walks among these mothballed military airplanes. Actually, the shot continues uncut, and at the end you see it's 40,000 aircraft sitting on the ground, all still usable. And this kind of elation, this kind of cornucopia, the feeling. And I said, I have heard something from Madagascar, the wrongest corner of the world, but that's what I'm going to put in there. So it's not a question of culture, it's a question of what flows with the film, what lifts the film up, what would not be fitting, and that's why I played, and we deliberately looked for some music that, of course, there's wonderful Japanese music, for example, with very soft flowing flutes. In fact, some of that could have been used, but it didn't dawn on me at the moment when I gave this advice in 5 seconds flat.
Up here.
We're up here. Hi.
I didn't know that there was a mic up there, sorry.
Yes, there are two.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, hello, we love you. I'm wondering, you use a lot of spiritual music, and I'm wondering if you've ever had anything like a peak experience. I know you don't believe in God or anything like that, but you know, something spiritual, something out of body, something that you felt like the music took you somewhere else.
No, not out of body. I've always been in my body, and I like my body when I kick a penalty at the opponent's goal. So, but there seems to be some distant echo from my adolescence. I had a dramatic religious, extremely deep, extremely dramatic religious phase for very few years, which left me gradually and fairly quickly. So in many of my films, you have even the word God in the title, Agere, the wrath of God, or a beautiful one as a title. The Caspar Hauser film has a title, Every Man for Himself and God Against All. That's a title. And it has God in it, so there must be something still reverberating inside of my soul. But there was...
Okay. Yeah, Werner, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And my question is, there are films that have no soundtracks at all, and one of the good examples would be No Country for Old Men by Coen Brothers. So do you have any films that don't have soundtracks at all, and what do you think about that idea? And on the other side, are you planning on making a musical one day, something like La La Land wise?
I don't have talent for La La Land. Others do that much better. But yes, you are pointing out to films that have of course they have a soundtrack, but no music track. And of course there are some of the best films that were ever made have no music track. And notably so, for example, Bresson, the French. When you look at Pickpocket, or some other of his films, they are phenomenal. And even what he does with the sound, when there's dialogue, normally when we are speaking to each other, we would record the silence, the 2-second silence, because silence, room ambience is audible. When you cut it out, there's only technical silence left, and you notice it. And he does films, Bresson, where he deliberately cuts even the room tone, the room silence out in between the dialogues. And it creates a very, very strange, deep focus. And I like him for that. It's not an absolute must, but I'm too baroque or too much like a Renaissance figure. I want it all. I want to have great music in it and good stuff for the audience. So I'm ticking more primitive than Bresson, for example.
So can we expect a musical from you, like a couple years later?
No, I've never seen or heard an entire musical. Actually, I have seen La La Land, and I like the opening shot. It's really well done. So I wouldn't like to dismiss it, but it needs someone else who is in this culture. Okay, maybe here.
Hi. Has there ever been a generic sound or just generic rhythm, not a song or a piece of music, that has inspired one of your scenes?
Generic sound? What? Can you describe what you mean by generic sound?
Sure. So maybe the whir of a subway going by, things like that. So sort of like found sounds,
a bird.
things out of the environment. Yeah, things like that.
Well, that's an interesting question. I do not believe that things like this have occurred to me. Sometimes in Bells from the Deep, you have a lake in Russia with a thin layer of ice, and pilgrims are crawling out because deep at the bottom of the bottomless lake, there's a holy city of Kitesh, which was tossed by God, by an archangel, to the bottom of the lake to redeem them from the onslaught of the Tatars and the Huns. And they're listening, trying to catch a glimpse of the sunken city of Kitesh. And the entire ice was cracking, and there was a very strange sound, not like ice cracking would normally sound. And it was so enormous that I chose a spot where the two pilgrims were crawling out, where I had these very strange whipping cracks in the sound. But that moment could have inspired the entire film. It could have happened.
Thanks.
Hi, Werner Herzog. I was interested in, earlier you were describing the conflict that you came into with the Orthodox Church over the choral piece that you wanted to use in the opening scene of the documentary distributed by Netflix. Have there ever been, so you're an artist that's renowned for your singular and often uncompromising vision. Have there ever been any notable instances where you came into a legal or ethical quandary when wanting to use a piece of music?
Every day. Every day you run into, when you are doing a film, you have the borderlines all around you. And you see, I'm somehow rumored to be the guy who doesn't take no for an answer. That's silly. Of course I take no for an answer. And what I do, what you see, for example, in Astaire, the opening, the film had a grand total budget of $360,000 for the entire feature film, everything. And people told me, this is going to be too expensive, you cannot make it. I said, within the tiny budget, I can do it. I can do the doable. And I did it, and I'm glad that I did it. And sometimes I can give you a simple example. I was filming with inmates on death row in Texas, also in Florida. And there's a whole series of 8 films which was shown on Discovery. And I also made another film, a long film, which is, I think, on Netflix. It's called Into the Abyss, about a very complex murder case. And the leading perpetrator, 2 of them, the most dangerous of them, was executed 8 days later. And in a similar case, I was just about to leave with my crew for Texas from Los Angeles. And I had the okay from the inmate in writing. I had the okay from the warden, which you have to have. There are certain protocols. And it was all set, and I was just about to leave and I get an email from his attorney, and he says, please, could you abstain from filming with my client? We still have a last appeal going, and my client has a tendency to say stupid things in public, and it may jeopardize his chances. And I wrote back 2 words, filming cancelled. That was it. So of course I take no for an answer. And it didn't even come from the leading person, the one who was sitting on death row himself.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for being you.
I think we have one up there.
Hi there. I have an oddly specific question. Everybody in the room will remember the music that accompanies the dancing chicken at the end of Stroszek. And one thing I've always been curious about, in Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, there's a scene where a drug dealer gets shot many, many times. And Nick Cage says, shoot him again, and the person says, what for? And he says, his soul is still dancing. We cut over, and there is the man's spirit breakdancing over the dead body. And the music that accompanies this breakdancing ghost is the same hoedown style music from Stroszek.
Exactly, yes.
Mm-hmm,
I had no qualms to recycle it. Decades later, 3 decades later, and 35 or 38 films later, I went back to that music because it fits so wonderfully. And instead of dancing chicken, you see a guy who is shot, a drug dealer, shot dead, and the bad lieutenant asks, shoot him again, to one of the bad guys, and he says, what for? Because his soul is still dancing, and he laughs his crazy laugh, and then the camera pans, and you see really a dancing soul, and it's a break dancer in exactly the same costume, a gaudy red jacket, and doing the break dance until the dancing soul is shot and collapses, and then the guy is really dead. So it needs Sonny Terry.
Here.
Up there, and then we'll do the...
I just had a philosophical question about the sublime. You spoke about it after your speech in Lessons of Darkness, so I was wondering, can you sort of like expand on the cinematic sublime and how music can aid to create that?
Lessons of Darkness has a lot of different music in it. It was actually on the I filmed the fires in Kuwait after the first Iraq-Kuwait war, when all the oil wells were set on fire. And there's notably some music, for example, Wagner, Das Rheingold, something with a gigantic crescendo, and much of the music is made in a way that it looks like a cosmic crime or a cosmic disaster and catastrophe. I didn't want to make a regular documentary because in 1 hour of film in Lessons of Darkness, you do not recognize our planet anymore. It's so devastated, and because of that there was very specific music, and it's a variety of music. There's Arvo Pärt, Richard Wagner, there is Grieg, Edvard Grieg, the Norwegian. There is, for example, Verdi, Requiem, and a couple of other compositions. So, but they all have a certain amount of sacrality in it, something big and cosmic.
Do you mind expanding on what you mean by creating like the sublime in like The Spectator for that documentary? Because I'm doing a paper on that.
Well, sublime, that's a good question, because I tried to elevate, or I always try to elevate the audience very high up. And the film actually begins, you remember it probably, with a quote from a French philosopher. And it's a very beautiful quote by Blaise Pascal. He spoke, for example, in short aphorisms about the unbelievable, unending emptiness of spaces makes him frightened. And now I have a quote, and it says, "The collapse of the stellar universe will occur like creation in grandiose splendor." Under it, Blaise Pascal, but it was not him, I made it up. And I think Pascal couldn't have said it better, number one. And number two, I wanted to elevate the audience into a region of the sublime before they see the first image. And I'd never let them down for a second. And that's the caliber of the film. And I do, in order to look into a deeper truth, into some ecstasy of truth, I would do something. It's not a forgery, it's a natural sort of adopting Pascal in my way. And I'm not doing that in order to cheat the audience. I do not do that. I want to make them see something deeper. And I would like to quote Shakespeare, who says, the most truthful poetry is the most feigning. And my other big witness would be Michelangelo with his Pietà in St. Peter's in Rome. Mary, the mother of Jesus, holds the dead body of Jesus in her arms, in her lap. And Jesus is a man of 33. And when you look into the face of Mary, she's a 17-year-old girl. The mother of Jesus is 17. Did he want to cheat us? No, of course not. Did he want to defraud us? Did he want to lie to us? No, he just gives us a deeper inner truth, and music, and sometimes a text, like at the end of the great Ecstasy of the sculptor Steiner, transport us into an area where film sometimes can end up into something where we feel weightless, where we feel absence of gravity, where we feel something elevating and exhilarating. Film can do that, and music can do that, and poetry can do that, and I will do that as long as I'm not taken to the next lunatic asylum. Thank you very much. We should stop here.
Thank you.